Many patients that I see with metabolic syndrome, with insulin resistance, with metabolic inflexibility, whatever word you want to describe for an epidemic in our country, swear that they do not eat sugar or carbohydrates. And yet, when we show them where it's hiding, they are shocked. So one of the things when I see a person with insulin resistance, with high insulin levels, even if they have a normal hemoglobin A1C, and for those of you who don't know what a hemoglobin A1C is, you see it advertised on TV every night. I got my A1C down. So A1C essentially tracks how much sugar and protein you're handling for about the 2 months prior to the test on average. And we actually track a compound that's attached to red blood cells, hence the word hemoglobin A1C. And red blood cells are used up and recycled about every 2 to 2.5 months. So we can track this age advanced glycation end product, which comes from sugars and proteins, in hemoglobin A1C. Unfortunately, most physicians, most healthcare providers do not measure either fasting insulin or a measure of insulin resistance, which is how hard it is for insulin, which is a salesperson, to sell the sugars that you eat to your muscles. And if your muscles are not working, they don't need much to eat. But if your muscles are full because you're eating a lot of carbohydrates, sugars, starches, then the muscles are resistant to buying these sugars that insulin is trying to sell. So two things happen. The insulin levels go up to try and push sugars, carbohydrates into the muscles. The muscles push back because they basically go, there's no room here. Go sell it someplace else. So insulin, in its wisdom, says, well, shoot, I really want to sell it to the muscles, but the muscles aren't interested. I gotta get this sugar out of my bloodstream. I know I'll turn it into fat. This person will thank me someday when the next famine occurs, and he'll be the big winner. Now, there aren't any famines anymore, at least here in the United States. So this constant buildup of fat storage is really due to the fact that we can't get rid of these sugars that we eat. So what do we do about that? Well, first of all, as I've talked about on the other podcasts, you got to know where these sugars are hidden. And the first thing to do on any package, look at the ingredients and look at that cute little box on the back. And don't look at sugars. Don't look at added sugars. Look at total carbohydrates. You take that number. The next line down says fiber. If there is some, you take that fiber number and subtract it from total carbohydrates. That will give you the amount of carbohydrates in that serving. Now, here's the bad news. There are 4 grams of carbohydrates in 1 teaspoon of sugar. So you divide by 4, and that will tell you the actual teaspoons of sugar in that food you're eating. For instance, my patients who eat bread swear they do not eat sugar. And yet when we show them the label, they're shocked to see that 1 piece of bread has 4 teaspoons of sugar, and so on and so forth. Their healthy cassava tortillas are loaded with sugar. So here's the swaps that you can have plenty to eat without this metabolic fallout. And the exciting thing is we can watch this happen in every one of my patients. Their triglycerides fall. Now, triglycerides are the first form of fat that we make from eating sugars and starches. That's where triglycerides come from. Most people are told it's from eating fat. No, it's from eating sugars and starches, including fruit. Their insulin levels fall. Their insulin resistance falls. Now, but you say, but wait a minute, hemoglobin A1C is telling me how much sugar I'm eating. No, it's telling you how you're handling that sugar. And what shocks so many of my patients who have a normal hemoglobin A1C and have been told by their healthcare provider they're not diabetic, they're not pre-diabetic, are shocked when they see that their fasting insulin level is above 6, and anything above that is too much, and their insulin resistance is elevated. Now, I use an insulin resistance score of HOMA-IR, HOMA-IR. IR stands for insulin resistance. And you can ask your healthcare provider to order it. They may not know what it means, but it should be less than 1, will take less than 2. But if it's 2 and above, you are very insulin resistant. What do we do? So first of all, one of my favorite pasta swaps are miracle noodles or shirataki noodles or glucomana noodles. These are zero digestible carbs. It's basically pure glucomana, konjac root. Now, the great news is your gut buddies absolutely love it. It's one of the best soluble fibers there is. There's no glucose spike. There's no crash. Everybody wins. Now, you got to remember that you have to prepare miracle noodles, shirataki noodles properly because, quite frankly, they're slimy. And I get it. Even my wife doesn't like them slimy. But if you cook them, and I've got YouTube videos on how to do it, you put them on a nonstick pan, the proper nonstick pans, heat them and move them around until they're squeaking. And the more you move them around, the more they squeak. The water goes away and they'll actually get the mouthfeel you're looking for. But if you skip that step, a lot of you aren't going to like them. Sweeteners. I love allulose. Now, allulose is a true sugar. Make sure you get non-GMO allulose. Allulose commercially is primarily produced from corn. So you really want non-GMO allulose. The great thing about allulose is it's absorbed, but then our gut buddies eat it. Human studies show it can actually lower post-meal glucose. I use it in my coffee. I drink my coffee black, but studies have shown that allulose in your coffee actually lowers blood glucose from drinking coffee. And it's really one of the only sweeteners I actually approve. It is natural. There's the old funny saying that celery is a negative calorie food. And that's true. You actually burn more calories eating celery than you get from it. So celery is actually kind of crunchy water with polyphenols. And that's a good thing. Munch on celery. There's no sugar. There's no starch. It's great for your gut buddies and circulation. Another one I think is often really neglected is cabbage. Now, it's really an underrated powerhouse. It's very low carb. Now, it ferments beautifully. That's a big postbiotic payoff. So, most people know sauerkraut. Most people know kimchi. And here's the good news. You don't have to buy raw sauerkraut or raw kimchi. You'll get every bit of benefit of getting it in a can or a glass jar. So don't worry, but fermented cabbage is a win-win. Now here's a really fun one, and this is going to surprise you. fermented sausage sticks. Protein in general, particularly protein that has not been pre-digested, is a good thing to eat if you want to lose a bunch of calories in the process of breaking it down. We use about 30% of the calories in protein, meat, in the digestion process of breaking these complex proteins down into absorbable amino acids. In one way we talk about protein is a thermogenic food because we actually create heat in the process of breaking down these compounds. So why don't I tell you to just go out and have a piece of steak? Well, steak, beef, lamb, pork, unfortunately has a really mischievous sugar molecule called Nu-5GC that really damages your gut wall, damages your blood vessels, damages your joints, damages your blood-brain barrier. If you ferment beef, lamb, or pork with bacteria, the bacteria eat the Nu-5GC, so it's not there any longer. Traditionally, true fermented sausages don't have any sugar. They don't have any carbohydrates. They don't have that Nu-5GC molecule. And you'll lose about 30% of the calories that's on that label in the process of digestion. So if you pick the right brand, if you see the words fermented, or if you see lactic acid cultures, it's a win for a low sugar pick. It's minimal sugar if you pick the right brand. There are natural probiotics in that fermented stick. And quite frankly, it's one of my go-to travel proteins because it's easy to carry with you. It's obviously preserved. You don't have to refrigerate it. And you can eat it on the run. Let me add another personal favorite that I don't think gets enough love. I've written about it before, but baru nuts. Now, baru nuts are very similar in taste and crunch to peanuts, but they're a really fascinating nut from primarily the very arid parts of Brazil and Bolivia. And these nuts are harvested by indigenous people. The nuts have to be roasted, but the takeaway about these nuts is that almost all the carbohydrates in these nuts are fiber, soluble fiber. They are loaded with polyphenols, particularly in the skin. And they've got a nice, healthy amount of protein, plant protein, in each of these nuts. And again, if you really miss the peanuts that I've taken away from you, get yourself some baru nuts. You're going to get polyphenols. You're really not going to get any carbohydrates. You're going to get a nice dose of fiber and a pretty good helping of protein. Those are easy to carry. They're now easier and easier to find. Every time you buy them, you're going to help indigenous people survive and keep the rainforest alive. So those are my best swaps. So these swaps are going to keep your glucose low without relying on your willpower. The other thing is that your gut buddies will get what they want. And if you give your gut buddies what they want, they'll stop screaming at you and you'll stop hurting your mitochondria. And best thing yet, your insulin levels will drop, your insulin resistance will drop, and you might actually see the weight on the scale drop.